people who quit their jobs without notice. What was the straw that broke the camel's back?
My dad died right before Christmas. I was already scheduled for a week off for family travel. HR said I could add 3 more days for funeral services so we could have it after the holiday. I came back and received a call from HR. The woman apologized and said she needed to ask, but would make it brief. She asked if my dad actually died. I told her yes, and she apologized again and said she didn't need anything else. Then the office manager called me into her office to tell me my boss had been telling people she thought I was faking it to get more time off. My boss was horrible in general and relied on me to do the majority of her work, which is what led her to creating the story about my dad not actually dying. She was hoping I'd be called back early from my trip. I had been interviewing for a job at another company and got an offer the day I got back. I called from my desk and accepted the offer, then packed my things and left.
Over a decade ago, worked at Tim Hortons. Had been there 6 years on overnight shift. 11 p.m., 7 a.m. We were always understaffed, usually just 2 people, one in the back, one at front of house. Of course, it is slower than during the day, that goes without saying, but there are a few rushes when certain places close. Anyways, they hire back a guy who had previously been fired like 4 times for just not showing up. He was on the schedule on a Sunday morning with me. There was a 20 dozen donut order, and that was the day the freezer truck arrived, and I put that away. I remember saying, if he doesn't show up, I'm probably just going home. Needless to say, he doesn't show up. Managers aren't picking up either. I think I stayed for a few hours, futilely trying to get everything done. I closed down the front and the drive-thru for what I intended to be a few hours to try to at least have the order ready for 6 a.m. But then, a switch kind of flipped. I realized I wasn't going to be able to take any break the entire time. Somehow I'd have to figure out how to put away a freezer delivery, which arrives literally at 5 a.m., which is busy as hell, and I'd be doing that as well. The people that showed up in the morning would just do their usual bitching about stuff I wasn't able to do. I'd probably get written up again for some stupid reason or because I didn't do X or Y or whatever. And all this for like $10, $50 HR. I paused and asked myself, how long do I want to work here? And right then, a bunch of drunk kids were knocking on the door, apparently confused why the lights were off and the door was locked, because that's an enigma. I decided 6 years is enough and went home.
I got hired by Dillard's, but they kept pushing back my start date by weeks because the store owner was on vacation. And with my budget, I really need to stay working. They make a huge deal of starting you off a little above min wage and promising frequent raises and easy commissions. Talked to a friend who worked there before, and it sounded like they only start you off above min wage, so they can give you a pay cut as soon as you miss a quota. I ended up starting another job while I was waiting for them. 5 guys did this to me when I was 18. Hired me, said I could start as soon as the manager got back to train me. 6 weeks later, I had run out of money and moved in with my grandparents in a different city 4 hours away, and they called me asking if I could come in Monday morning for training. I told them politely to go fudge themselves.
Heard my boss talking about my mom, who did not work for the company, on the phone to HR while at work. She said my mom was a nut job and went on to lie about how she had plans to replace me for the last few weeks. She was deeply paranoid, and earlier that week she'd gotten wind that I was looking for a second job closer to home, which caused us to have a long talk where I kept having to reassure her I had no plans to quit, but just her assuming I would quit had made her turn on me like that after 6 years of working together, including multiple major work events, like the big 2020 event. So somehow she went from begging me not to leave to the next day telling HR she had plans to fire me for weeks. But it was what she said about my mom during that same call that broke the camel's back. My mom was in deep grieving at the time, having found her boyfriend dead on the floor on her birthday, and I had confided in my boss that I was spending a lot of energy trying to help my mom and that it was causing me stress. As soon as I heard her say that, I packed up my desk, walked over to HR and told them everything I'd heard, and quit when they said they didn't have any other positions open elsewhere in the company and said they wouldn't take action against my boss.